Hello everyone, today we are starting the story of a young girl who has no desire. She happily embraces whatever comes her way, whether it's a slightly bruised apple or a mismatched sock. However, her life goes upside down when a mischievous god of desire spots her and decides to stir up some trouble. From that moment on, life gets downright naughty as desires run amok and Hatzel finds herself swept up in a whirlwind of unexpected and often absurd situations. Before we continue the story, please leave a like as today's goal is likes and hit the subscribe button for more videos. The story begins in an orphanage, where a teacher tells the students to always remember her advice, not to expect too much if they want to make everyone happy. She adds that sharing is caring and that one should think twice before claiming anything. The less one wants, the happier they can be. One little girl listens very carefully to her teacher, absorbing every word while all the other children seem more interested in counting ceiling tiles than in her pearls of wisdom. One Sunday, when a donation of toys and other items arrives at the orphanage, all the children become busy fighting and complaining over the toys. The teacher, observing the chaos, wonders how to manage the limited donations for so many children. Meanwhile, the little girl notices that no one else is interested in the book titled Greek Mythology for Kids. She flips through the pages and reads about Dionysus, the god of desire, pleasure, joy, and great wine. She finds it fascinating that Dionysus is associated with grapes and joy. She imagines Dionysus singing and having a party with his friends with plenty of food for everyone. She thinks it must be fun and imagines that Dionysus would let her eat grapes all day and have whatever she wants. She glances at the book and then at the toys, thinking about how she would also like a toy. However, she remembers her teacher's advice that wanting less can lead to greater happiness. Laughing, she decides that the book is perfect for her and tells her teacher with a smile. Years later, the same girl, Hatzel, now a teenager, discusses her college applications with her professor. Hatzel expresses her desire to apply to schools for which she is overqualified, wanting to play it safe. Her professor, surprised, questions her decision, pointing out her excellent grades and suggesting she try for scholarships if the tuition is too high for the orphanage. Hatzel acknowledges that the cost is part of the issue, but explains that she doesn't want to risk applying to a prestigious school she might not get into. She adds that she doesn't want to attend a school she can't handle and mentions the difficulty of affording rent and school once she leaves the orphanage. The professor commends Hatzel for her approach, reminding her not to be greedy. Outside the campus, a young boy named Hyeonsu nervously approaches Hatzel. He introduces himself and confesses his feelings for her, asking if she will go out with him. Hatzel is surprised by the unexpected proposal. She reflects silently, feeling her heart race with uncertainty. She considers that he may not fit her ideal type but appears decent enough. After a moment of contemplation, she decides to accept his offer. Hatzel thinks about how there's no reason to turn him down and acknowledges her curiosity about dating. She resolves to give it a chance, thinking he might grow on her. She reaffirms her life motto of playing it safe and decides to embrace the opportunity. Fast forward to 7 years later, Hatzel picks up a phone call from her friend while shopping to surprise her boyfriend after returning from the office. Her friend greets her with curiosity and excitement, commenting on how unusual it is to see Hatzel splurging on wine. She wonders aloud if Hatzel is finally letting loose and enjoying herself. Hatzel explains that she spotted a special bottle that Hyeonsu had always wanted, and she feels it's a day worth celebrating. Her friend congratulates her and rebukes Hatzel on spending so much on her boyfriend. She advises Hatzel to balance her generosity with treating herself occasionally. Changing the subject, she congratulates Hatzel on receiving the silver play button. Hatzel thanks her friend with a reluctant laugh. Her friend notices her subdued response and asks why she isn't more enthusiastic. Hatzel admits feeling overwhelmed and uncertain if she truly deserves the recognition. Her friend tells her gently, recalling how she played it safe in the past, like when the orphanage director encouraged her to apply to teachers' college despite her outstanding college entrance exam results. She draws a parallel, insisting that Hatzel should feel proud about her achievements with her channel. She dismisses any feeling of being overwhelmed, emphasizing that Hatzel doesn't owe anyone anything and should confidently use her talents. Hatzel responds with gratitude, acknowledging her friend's words and reaffirming her efforts to do her best. Still on the call, Hatzel enters her building and hears the sound of a door opening. She looks over and sees a couple emerging, her eyes landing on the striking beauty of the young man. Shocked by his appearance, she quickly realizes her gaze and feels embarrassed. She starts to contemplate the boy's beauty, considering him the most handsome guy she has ever seen, especially since this is the first time she's encountered him since he moved in. Trying to reassure herself, she reminds herself that there's no one better than her boyfriend, and that this admiration is akin to appreciating a pretty flower. Remembering she's still on the phone, she quickly apologizes to her friend for zoning out. Her friend continues speaking on the phone, asking about Hyeonsu's job search and how he's managing financially. Hatzel responds, momentarily distracted by the scene unfolding before her. Her friend probes further, hinting at Hyunsu's reliance on Hatsel's channel for income. Hatsel brushes it off with a smile, mentioning their upcoming marriage and expressing confidence that he'll manage despite the tough job market. She reassures her friend that she's willing to support him through it all. Meanwhile, Hetzel's attention is again diverted to the couple standing nearby. The girl asks the handsome young man when they are getting married and suggests he move out of their current small place since he has the money. The man reacts with surprise, joking about their relationship status and teasingly questioning how long they've been together. The girl responds defensively, mentioning how quickly some people get engaged after a blind date and suggests talking to their parents about their future. Instead of answering, the man starts kissing her, which embarrasses Hatzel as she watches. Embarrassed, Hatzel watches the couple with disbelief as they engage in public displays of affection. She inwardly criticizes the young man's behavior, recalling how he used to bring different girls over and create disturbances. Reflecting on the scene before her, Hetzel feels disappointed and assumes he brushed off the girl's mention of marriage, finding it unkind. Hetzel scrutinizes his actions with a critical eye. She judges his treatment of his girlfriend as mean and arrogant, contrasting sharply with her previous admiration for him. Realizing her earlier feelings were misplaced, Hatzel admonishes herself for being drawn to him just moments ago. Feeling conflicted and troubled, Hatzel sighs at the thought of how Hyunsu would react if he knew about the incident. Later, as Hatzel enters her apartment, she cheerfully announces her arrival and eagerly looks for Hyunsu. She excitedly talks about the silver play button and suggests filming the unboxing video together, followed by a celebration. However, she is met with silence and notices that the apartment is dark. Confused and concerned, she calls out to Hyunsu, wondering why he is sitting in the dark. She remarks on their plans to unbox the play button together. Hatzel taps on the topic, questioning how Hyunsu could have opened it without letting her know. She asks if he managed to film the unboxing video solo, hinting that it wouldn't have been easy for him to handle the camera alone. Then, without warning, Hyunsu tells her that he wants to break up. Hours later, Hatzel is having drinks with her friend Sueyeon. Suddenly, her other friend, Yuju, arrives in a rush. Noticing Hetzel's puffy eyes, Yuju immediately expresses concern and anger, suspecting her jerk boyfriend has hurt her. Sueyeon gently taps Hatzel on the shoulder, encouraging her to save her tears and reminding her that whoever caused this pain isn't worth it. Yuju, filled with frustration, recalls how Hetzel has been loyal to this person since high school and can't believe the audacity of the one who hurt her. Hetzel then reveals that she has lost her channel. She explains that they had been using Hyunsu's account and the channel was under his name. Believing they would get married, she hadn't signed a contract or made any formal agreements. Her friends erupt with anger and frustration, urging Hatzel to take legal action against Hyunsu immediately. They emphasize the importance of the silver play button and express their outrage at the situation. Hatzel, through her sobs, worries that pursuing legal action might be a waste of time and money if she loses the case. She feels responsible for the situation and considers letting it go. Yuju, unable to contain her frustration, expresses her anger loudly. Sueyeon, trying to understand the situation better, asks if Hyunsu gave a reason for ending the relationship. Hatzel recalls the whole incident vividly. She had confronted Hyunsu, asking why he was ending their relationship despite her best efforts to commit. She wondered if she had done something wrong or made him angry. Hyunsu replied that she hadn't done anything wrong, that was the problem. He felt suffocated by the lack of conflict in their relationship, interpreting it as her looking down on him. He explained that her lack of expectations and the fact that she never got upset made him feel worthless. Even the situation with the silver play button highlighted this issue. Despite her eagerness to unbox it together, she wasn't annoyed when he did it alone. Hyunsu revealed that he was seeing someone else, leaving Hetzel heartbroken and stunned. In the present, Hetzel, while drinking, reflects on Hyunsu's excuse for cheating on her. She sobs, thinking about how she believes she was being considerate by not expecting too much from him. She questions how she could have expected more than what she knew he was capable of, considering it greedy to do so. Yuju reacts with frustration, while Sueyeon sarcastically comments that Hetzel might be the first person ever dumped for not wanting anything. Sueyeon reminds Hetzel that Hyunsu was just using her and hadn't been trying to get a real job since he started freeloading. Yuju, trying to lift Hetzel's spirits, suggests they find her a loyal guy who will treat her like a queen. Sueyeon joins in, outlining the criteria for a decent match. Cute, around Hetzel's age, tall, diligent, gentle with a good physique, a 9-to-5 job to match Hetzel's schedule, and a decent salary. Hetzel stops them, reminding them that she just broke up hours ago and isn't that picky. She also mentions that expecting so much from someone feels greedy to her. Sueyeon and Yuju can't believe it, thinking Hetzel's standards are too low. Yuju insists that their list is just a basic checklist for finding a somewhat decent guy, prompting Hetzel to question their assurance. Suian expresses frustration, questioning how long Hatzel will continue to keep her standards so low. She reminds Hatzel of the many opportunities she has let slip through her fingers, mentioning how Hatzel chose her major based on the least competition and how she dated someone below her league despite having many admirers in high school. Suian reveals how upset her friends were by her choices. Yuju adds that Hatzel always seems to choose the worst option, acknowledging that while Hatzel might have her reasons, she shouldn't give up on what is rightfully hers. Meanwhile, Hatzel is lost in her thoughts, recalling her boyfriend's last words about her low expectations, making him feel worthless. She finally responds to her friends, admitting that she did get dumped for not wanting anything. She confesses that she saw it coming and didn't want to feel disappointed by getting her hopes up. Hatzel also felt uncomfortable thinking she was taking opportunities away from others. Surprisingly, losing her channel didn't feel too bad as it lifted a weight off her shoulders. She acknowledges that most people will understand, but that's just who she is and who she has always been. Hatzel concludes by saying that she can't simply change that part of herself. Suian questions Hatzel, demanding to know what is holding her back and urging her to get greedy and pursue what she wants. She grabs Hatzel's collar, challenging her to think about the first thing she wants to do. Suian insists that if the world were to end tomorrow, Hatzel should consider her deepest desire. Later that night, at an outdoor party where everyone is getting wild, Hatzel stands alone, feeling out of place. She wonders where Suian and Yuju have gone. Fidgeting awkwardly amidst the chaos. Surrounded by whispers and the intimate activities of others, she feels uncomfortable and unsure where to look. Suian finds Hatzel and encourages her to loosen up and not be shy. Hatzel expresses a desire to at least change her clothes, but Suian insists that what matters is her will. Hatzel clarifies that she never wanted to come to a club, she just wanted a boyfriend. Suian dismisses her concern, stating that the club is the best place to find one, leaving Hatzel feeling conflicted and overwhelmed. Hatzel starts feeling intimidated, confessing she doesn't even know how to flirt. Suian encourages her to just approach people and say whatever comes to mind, insisting that quiet goody-goodies like her often turn out to be the naughtiest. Hatzel protests, claiming she isn't like that, but Suian insists she should open her eyes and start hunting, suggesting she might meet someone who will ignite a fire in her that's about to go out. Just then, Hatzel notices her neighbor from the elevator, the handsome man she encountered earlier, dancing and enjoying himself with other girls. She can't help but keep watching him. Suian, meanwhile, marvels at the attractive men around them, pointing out potential catches for Hatzel. Hatzel reflects on seeing the man again, thinking that she would never have a chance with someone like him in her entire lifetime. She assumes he probably only dates models and wouldn't be the type to marry. As they make eye contact, Hatzel becomes increasingly self-conscious and awkward, wondering if she did something wrong. The intense moment makes her heart race and she feels a strong urge to run away. She gulps, feeling the overwhelming tension of the situation. Meanwhile, the man, who is actually a deity, notices Hatzel and is startled by what he sees. He looks at her jar of desire and finds it completely empty. He marvels at the rarity of a human with no desire, noting how clean it is, as if it never held anything to begin with. It's as if Hatzel has never known greed or desire in her entire life. Intrigued by this unusual discovery, he decides it might be fun to interact with her. Suian checks on Hatzel, who is lost in thought. Hatzel snaps back to reality and notices that the man is gone, wondering if he is ticked off. Her heart races as she reflects on his sudden disappearance, feeling a mix of curiosity and unease. She concludes that he definitely didn't seem like the nice type, and the encounter leaves her feeling bewildered and apprehensive. Just then, Hatzel is shocked to see her friend Yuju on the floor, seemingly in a confrontation with an arrogant girl. The girl demands Yuju to repeat something to her face, while Yuju, still on the floor, retorts that the girl should have learned in preschool to apologize when stepping on someone's toes. As murmurs spread through the crowd, the girl challenges Yuju to prove that she stepped on her. Hatzel and Suian rush over to help Yuju up. Hatzel asks if Yuju is all right, concern evident in her voice. The girl, noticing Hatzel, mocks her appearance, commenting on her hoodie and insinuating that they look like they're coming from a Zumba class. She sarcastically suggests they stick to a honky-tonk for their next night out. Yuju, incensed by the girl's mocking comment, lunges towards her and grabs her by the hair, demanding to know what she just said. The girl panics and calls out for her boyfriend, desperately pleading for help as she struggles against Yuju's grip. Yuju taunts her, suggesting that she has plenty of energy from all the Zumba classes. The girl's cries for help are answered by none other than the handsome man Hatzel had noticed earlier. As he steps forward to intervene, Hatzel recognizes him and wonders why he is with a different girl now. She thought he was with his girlfriend that morning, leading to confusion about his relationship status. The man calmly asks Yuju to stop, suggesting that enough is enough. The girl seizes the opportunity to paint herself as the victim, claiming that Yuju and her friends are weird and falsely accuse her of stepping on them. Hazel is left contemplating the situation, feeling incredulous that neither the girl nor her boyfriend apologize. She tries to rationalize that they could just be friends despite the appearance of cheating. However, her thoughts are interrupted when the man steps close to her and whispers, warning her not to stare too much. As the man walks away with his girlfriend, she overhears the girlfriend asking what he said to her. The man glances back at Hazel and winks, leaving her even more confused about his behavior. Back in her building, Hazel can't shake off thoughts of the man from the elevator. She reflects on his actions, feeling angered by his rudeness and apparent flirtation. Frustrated, she drinks more out of sheer irritation, lamenting her single status but vehemently denying any attraction to someone like him. Reminding herself of her role as a moral ethics teacher, she insists she has no desire for neighborly relations with him. While pressing the elevator button, Hazel muses about how sometimes it's okay to indulge in anger. She tries to dismiss thoughts of the man, convincing herself that he's no longer a part of her life and hoping never to encounter him again. As the elevator door dings open, Hazel steps in, determined to put the encounter behind her. When she reaches her floor and the elevator doors open, she is startled to see the same man passionately kissing another woman right in front of her door. Hazel, shocked at seeing yet another girl with him, politely asks to get through, stating that it's her door. The woman giggles, thinking it was the man's place, and suggests continuing inside. As Hazel tries to process this, she reflects on the man's behavior, thinking about how he keeps messing with people's hearts. She refuses to stand by and do nothing. Just as she is about to confront them, the man suddenly makes a cryptic comment about the girl's lust tasting foul. The girl, confused, asks what he means, but the man dismissively states that he's lost his appetite and that they are even, having both gotten what they wanted. She wanted to sleep with him once, and he had a taste of her lust. He then pushes the girl into the elevator and stays behind as the doors close. The girl protests, finding the situation unfunny and expressing frustration as the elevator descends. The man then murmurs about his frustration with being called baby by everyone. He expresses disdain for the girl's behavior, considering it an offense to his senses. He then glances at Hazel, who stands there, startled and beginning to sweat. Hazel wonders if he just broke up with his girlfriend, noting his strange comments about taste. The man then comments on her late return home, mentioning he has been waiting for her the entire time. Confused and alarmed, Hazel questions why he would care and insists she has no business with him. The man laughs, finding the situation amusing. With a snap, they are suddenly teleported to a heavenly realm, where he sits on a throne of marble. He declares that a god does not need permission to care, leaving Hazel bewildered, wondering if she's just very drunk. The deity then suggests they become friends, calling it a rare and lucky offer. Reading from a paper about her, he notes Hazel Jun's name, her age of 27, and her job teaching ethics at Baby Middle School. He mentions her choice of ethics over physical education and music, her recent breakup, and the loss of a valuable asset. He comments on how that explains her out-of-place appearance at the club, finding it amusing. Despite her seeming lack of desire, he acknowledges that pain affects everyone equally, even those like her. Meanwhile, Hazel is awestruck as the deity continues speaking, expressing regret for not approaching her at the club earlier. He mentions that he found her adorable but hesitated because she looked terrified like a deer in headlights. Hazel is frozen in place, unable to comprehend the situation. The deity keeps talking, explaining that he's been thinking she's his type since he first saw her. Hazel, still in shock, apologizes and questions how he knows so much about her, wondering who he really is and what he means by calling himself a god. He reiterates his offer to be friends, moving very close to her and questioning if she is turning him down. Suddenly, he takes her into his arms, causing Hazel to internally reflect on the surreal nature of the situation, thinking this must be a dream. Hazel reflects inwardly, convinced that this must be a dream. She could not believe the surreal scenario with changing landscapes and people teleporting around her, including a handsome deity who wants to be her friend. With an awkward cough, Hazel tentatively accepts his offer of friendship, stumbling over her words as she introduces herself. Hazel Jun, trying to sound nonchalant while her heart skips a beat. She can't help but wonder aloud who this mysterious deity is, though she suspects he already has her name monogrammed on his celestial bathrobe. The deity laughs heartily at her reaction and reassures her not to be afraid, promising to stop teasing her. He then asks if she remembers reading about Greek mythology when she was younger, referring to her as dear neighbor. Hazel replies affirmatively, hesitantly addressing him as Sir. The deity then asks her if she has heard about a god named Dionysus. Hazel recalls Dionysus as the god known for revelry and wine, prompting the deity to inquire further. She hesitates before referencing Friedrich Nietzsche's views on Dionysus, elaborating on the god's symbolism and significance. The deity cuts her off gently, noting Nietzsche's admiration for Dionysus and promising to mention Hazel to him in the future. He adds that Nietzsche would be pleased to hear about an ethics teacher who knows his quotes by heart. Hetzel cautiously questions if Dio is implying he is Dionysus himself, to which he jovially responds that he goes by Dio in the mortal world and suggests they let their friendship develop naturally over time. Hetzel, bewildered by the surreal nature of her dream, laughs along with Dio's playful banter. He teasingly mentions that other gods might punish her for diminishing them to a mere party animal, but in his case, he decides to spare her, acknowledging her uniqueness and deserving of special treatment. Hetzel, taken aback, asks why she deserves such treatment, to which Dio cryptically responds that he's interested in her, causing her to blush. Dio quickly clarifies that he's joking and invites her to follow him. As they walk, Dio asks Hetzel if she's a fan of wine. Hetzel admits that she does drink wine, but clarifies that the wine from earlier was actually a gift. Dio reacts with disappointment, mentioning he had thought she had good taste based on that. Hetzel realizes she has unintentionally followed Dio deeper into this surreal encounter. She clicks her tongue and glances around, taking in the vast collection of wines around them. Dio confirms that all the bottles are indeed wine, emphasizing they are masterpieces crafted with ingredients beyond mortal understanding, treasures even for gods. Mumbling to himself and scratching his head, Dio seems perplexed that Hetzel isn't enthusiastic about wine. He then abruptly stops walking and declares that he wants to give her a gift. Hetzel flinches in surprise at Dio's mention of a gift. Dio continues, explaining that as the god of lust and pleasure, he can perceive the desires of humans, but he finds none in Hetzel. He praises her for living a life free from greed and offers her a reward. Hetzel, taken aback by Dio's serious tone and strange words, thinks to herself that he seems to be making sense in a bizarre way. Dio reassures her that it's an honor to accept his gift, urging her to do so without hesitation. She tries to thank him, but out of nowhere he hugs her. Up close, she detects a strong scent of wine emanating from him, causing her to flinch slightly. Dio mentions it's a gift from a god and wonders aloud if she's curious about what it could be. Hetzel reflects on the situation, feeling a bit bewildered and questioning who Dio really is. Dio expresses mild frustration at her subdued reaction and playfully covers her eyes, remarking that she's hard to impress. He assures her there's no need to be tense and insists that what he has to offer is something irresistible to any human. He tells her to enjoy his gift. Hetzel, still puzzled, asks what exactly she's supposed to enjoy. Stuyen and Yuju gently nudge Hetzel to wake her up. They tell her she must be really drunk and ask how much she drank. Hetzel wakes up abruptly, realizing she's still at the party and lying on the dance floor. Yuju remarks loudly about the noise, questioning how Hetzel could sleep through it all. Hetzel breathes a sigh of relief, muttering to herself about the unreal nature of her recent dream involving gods. Meanwhile, 3 young men approach them. One of the men greets them cheerfully and asks if they are alone. He jokes about being a trio themselves and suggests sharing a table. His friend whispers to him, expressing disbelief about Hetzel being part of their group. Confused, Hetzel looks around trying to understand what's happening. Hetzel notices a peculiar gauge above each young man's head, indicating their desire for her. The first boy's gauge reads 33%, while the second boy's shows 12%. She finds herself perplexed, thinking she must be heavily intoxicated. The first boy impatiently remarks to second boy that it's not the time to be choosy, while the second boy points out that she's in sweats. Hetzel shakes her head, convinced she's seen things due to her inebriation. Suyen steps forward to apologize on her behalf, explaining that Hetzel has had a bit too much to drink. Looking at the touchscreen-like gauges above their heads, Hetzel taps the one above the second boy, causing the bar to instantly rise from 12% to 100%. Just then, the second boy drops to his knees before Hetzel with a thud. Hetzel responds with a puzzled expression. The boy goes on and asks for her name and boldly proclaims that she might be his destined match. He doesn't seem bothered by her relationship status, eagerly requesting her contact details. Grasping her hand eagerly, he prompts Hetzel to pull away, visibly surprised by his sudden shift in demeanor. His friends watched in surprise, wondering what's gotten into him as he went from hell no to hell yeah in seconds. Hetzel quickly makes up an excuse about needing to use the bathroom, hoping to escape the situation with a nervous laugh. He implores her not to go, unwilling to let go of her hand. Hetzel is taken aback by the turn of events, contemplating whether she somehow influenced his behavior. Moments later, as the music continues to play and the party roars on, she decides to give it a test, unsure of what the outcome might reveal. She touches the desire gauges of several boys, instantly increasing them to 100%. Immediately, they swarm towards her with enthusiasm, each using different pickup lines to express their attraction. Hetzel attempts to evade them, surprised that her actions have such a potent effect. Reflecting on the bizarre turn of events, she wonders to herself about the surreal nature of what is happening. Suddenly, screens appear before her, explaining that it is a gauge that measures people's desire for her, and she has the power to control it. The revelation dawns on her, and she marvels at the unexpected ability she possesses. Reading through the screens, Hetzel questions who is behind the messages. One of the screens responds, identifying itself as Dio and reminding her of their recent interaction. Hetzel feels a wave of desperation, wishing to return home and escape the strange situation. Meanwhile, sitting in his garden, Dio reflects on his genius idea of giving Hetzel the power of controlling the desire gauge. He muses over the ability to see and influence others' desires, confident that even Hetzel will succumb to this ability. He acknowledges that while he didn't want to deceive her, he provided her with this potent gift, considering it a fair exchange. Dio, with a self-assured chuckle, contemplates the allure of controlling the hearts of those she encounters and encourages Hetzel to embrace her newfound power. Meanwhile, trudging towards her apartment, Hetzel sighs deeply, feeling overwhelmed by the events that have unfolded. She continues to walk with heavy steps, reflecting on the chaos she barely escaped. She thinks to herself that Dio seems more like a brat than a god. Hetzel wonders if Dio would even respond if she knocked on his door, contemplating asking him to take back the gift he gave her. She bitterly concludes that whether he's human or a god, he's just a jerk. Meanwhile, Dio sits in his place, sipping wine and strategizing. He considers Hetzel's lack of interest in the men from the club and ponders the idea of introducing her to her ex-boyfriend, whom she hasn't moved on from. Just then, Hetzel notices Hyeonsu with another girl. The sight surprises her. Hetzel stares at Hyeonsu, questioning him about the girl accompanying him. Hyeonsu responds awkwardly, admitting they know each other in some capacity. Hetzel questions if it's from work. Observing this from afar while sipping his wine, Dio chuckles to himself. He finds human behavior predictable and amusing, shaking his head at their simplicity. Hyeonsu informs her that they know each other from work. Meanwhile, Hetzel reflects on the situation, observing Hyeonsu's demeanor and his words. She ponders why he appears so composed and untroubled. She can't help but wonder if he's banking on her usual habit of nodding along to everything, like she's in an eternal game of charades with no winner. As she thinks back on her journey towards living a more self-sufficient life, she clenches her fists. She recalls how quickly she learned to give up on things, believing it was her fate to suffer alone after their breakup. But now, Hetzel's emotions have grown more complex, like a Netflix series, full of twists, turns, and occasionally a comedy special. She suddenly feels a fierce desire for revenge against Hyeonsu, unable to tolerate his shameless behavior any longer. She confronts Hyeonsu, raising her voice. She questions what he told his new girlfriend about his job, mockingly asking if he presented himself as a YouTuber. Startled, Hyeonsu turns to her and asks, "What?" Hetzel continues, accusing him of not disclosing the truth about her channel that he stole. She suggests that if he wanted to hide their past relationship, he should have portrayed her as his boss instead. Hetzel asserts that she was the one who provided him with a regular salary. She then speculates that his new girlfriend probably doesn't know about his relationship of 7 years, which ended just that morning. Hetzel's mind races with these thoughts and scenarios, but back in reality, she realizes her initial thoughts are too restrained. She knows there must be something more impactful she can say, something that truly conveys the intensity of her emotions. She urges herself to think clearly, reminding herself that while she may hesitate at times, she's not naive. With a whirlwind of thoughts swirling in her head, she finds herself unable to speak. She resolves not to let this opportunity for revenge slip away. Suddenly, a realization strikes her. There's something far more powerful than mere words. Remembering Dio's mention of the desire gauge and his suggestion to enjoy it, Hetzel smirks. She approaches Hyeonsu and manipulates his desire gauge to 100%, unleashing its effects. Hyeonsu's demeanor changes immediately. He starts to express regret and blame his recent behavior on his new girlfriend, claiming she pressured him into it. His new girlfriend, confused and taken aback, questions his accusations. Turning back to Hetzel, Hyeonsu pleads desperately. He begs her to take him back, promising never to interfere with her channel again. He offers to sign a contract if needed and expresses remorse for his actions earlier that day. He even offers to redo his military service and vows to worship her. Meanwhile, Hetzel reflects on the unfolding scene before her. She had thought she desired this revenge, but now, despite Hyeonsu's impassioned pleas, she feels no better. From above, Dio watches with amusement. He laughs, acknowledging Hetzel's actions. He believes that as she continues to exact revenge, she will come to realize the full extent of her newfound power and derive even greater satisfaction from it. Hetzel directs a question towards Hyeonsu, inquiring if he regrets his actions. Hyeonsu's response is immediate and heartfelt. He confesses that upon seeing her again, he was overwhelmed by emotions reminiscent of their high school days. He expresses a strange confidence that these feelings will remain unchanged. He professes his love for her with great sincerity. With deep emotion, Hyeonsu kneels before Hetzel, pleading for her hand in marriage. Hetzel, in a moment of clarity, realizes that this isn't what she truly wanted. She swiftly runs away from the scene. Meanwhile, Hyunsu calls out desperately, asking Hetzel where is she going. As she continues to reflect, Hetzel concludes that she no longer values her YouTube channel. She halts, feeling regretful about her actions. She wishes she hadn't sought revenge on him and acknowledges her deep love for him. Hetzel believes that Hyunsu loved her too, at least until a certain point. She contemplates the cruelty of playing with someone's heart, especially ending a 7-year relationship with a false declaration of love. She feels that this betrayal is far more painful than being dumped herself. In a moment of desperation, she silently prays to Dio, thanking him for the gift but expressing her desire to return the power. She requests Dio to take back this ability immediately. Meanwhile, Dio observes Hetzel's actions with surprise. He reflects on her defiance of his expectations, finding it rather refreshing for a human like her. Screens materialize in front of Hetzel, through which Dio communicates with her. He mentions that he had forgotten she lacks desires, affirming his choice of her. Despite this, Dio considers it impolite to revoke her newfound ability too hastily. He decides to give her a few days to contemplate the situation. He chuckles. Hetzel sighs deeply, reflecting that she never should have gotten involved with Dio in the first place. Dio finds himself exhilarated by the situation. He hasn't felt this kind of excitement in a long time. He contemplates the prospect of creating a new wine, one with a seductive aroma that transitions from a refreshing sweetness on the tongue to a deep, flavorful richness that almost feels syrupy as it slides down the throat. The thought of tasting such a wine thrills him. Suddenly, a boy rushes up to Dio, eager to know about the talk of good wine. He demands to have a taste of the glass Dio holds in his hand and snatches it away without waiting for an answer. The boy quickly gulps down the contents of the glass. Dio expresses frustration as he reacts to the boy getting drunk. He chastises his servants for failing to prevent it despite his instructions. The servants apologize, explaining they tried but couldn't stop him. The boy complains that the wine tastes bland, criticizing Dio's recent winemaking efforts. He goes further, expressing disbelief at serving a lazy and incompetent god. Dio responds sarcastically, calling the boy his cute little servant, whose insolence peaks when intoxicated. The boy continues to plead with Dio, demanding action to improve the quality of the wine. He warns Dio that others are unhappy and suggesting he might be replaced as Dionysus. The boy even claims Zeus is considering firing Dio. Dio reflects on the situation, asking for patience as he works diligently to gather the necessary materials. He acknowledges the difficulty in creating good wine when the main ingredients are of poor quality. Dio remarks on how easily humans indulge themselves nowadays, their desires not having the opportunity to mature and develop richness over time. He notes that the absence of strict hierarchies means people can obtain what they want instantly without enduring hardship. Despite these challenges, Dio expresses optimism. He believes he has finally found a human worthy of his attention after all these years. He suggests waiting and observing what unfolds. Meanwhile, Hetzel sleeps peacefully in her apartment, unaware of Dio's musings and the impact of her newfound abilities. Next day, after finishing her lecture at school, Hetzel dismisses the class as the bell rings. Some students whisper among themselves, agreeing not to cause any trouble for Ms. Jian today, noting how tired she appears. As Hetzel exits the classroom, she reflects on her state. She acknowledges her raging hangover, recounting how she got dumped, drank heavily, and experienced several unbelievable events. She still struggles to believe it all happened. 2 students approach her, greeting her and commenting on her exhausted appearance. One of them even inquires if she stayed up all night, noting the dark circles under her eyes. Seeing the desire gauge above the heads of every male she encounters, Hetzel realizes that she can only see them over boys, not girls. She laughs, interpreting this as an indication of romantic attraction rather than just friendliness, and finds the situation amusing. As she observes the gauges, she notes that the colors of the panels seem to mark the level of attraction. She wonders why the details have to be so specific. While sitting at her desk, she continues to reflect. Hetzel thinks she should forget about the ability, recognizing that seeing people's emotions without their permission is intrusive. She wishes she didn't have this power, but now that she does, she feels an increasing temptation to check other people's desire levels. Suddenly, the vice principal approaches Hetzel, asking what she is muttering to herself about. Startled, she apologizes for her distracted behavior. At that moment, she notices someone with a desire gauge at 100%. Intrigued, she wonders about the meaning behind the full gauge and if it indicates sincere romantic interest. Curiosity getting the better of her, she decides to take a quick look to see whose seat it is. Approaching the desk, she discovers that it belongs to Juhan Park, the middle school math teacher. Juhan turns to her, noticing her presence. Jayan turns to her, inquiring what she needs. Hetzel, caught off guard, fumbles for an excuse, realizing she hasn't been able to talk to him since the new semester started. She awkwardly asks about his well-being and how his vacation was. Juven responds with a simple affirmative, leaving Hetzel reflecting on his demeanor. She considers Juven Park a math teacher known for his exacting, precise, and meticulous nature, almost machine-like in his approach. To his students, he is both captivatingly charismatic and a terrifying tyrant, earning him a reputation akin to a reaper. Hetzel admits to herself that he scares her, having worked with him for 3 years without ever seeing him smile. Although she knows he's not a bad person, he still makes her uncomfortable. The realization that he harbors romantic feelings for her leaves her bewildered. Suddenly, screens appear before Hetzel, startling her as Dio's message materializes. Dio informs her that the situation she's concerned about is rare. He emphasizes that a full desire gauge means Juven is already deeply infatuated with her. Dio suggests that Juven would likely be overjoyed by even the slightest attention from Hetzel and encourages her to just go ahead and do whatever she wants. Hetzel whispers her frustration about Dio's interference in her life. Dio, unapologetic, replies that he can't help but see the things he sees. Hetzel asks if it is really that difficult for him to take away the ability and make everything go back to normal. Dio, feeling hurt, remarks on how she is ungrateful for the amazing present he gave her. Hetzel insists she never asked for it in the first place. Dio then proposes a deal. If Juven confesses his feelings, Dio will take the ability back and leave her life. With a sense of urgency, Hetzel approaches Juven and directly asks him if he likes her. Shocked by Hetzel's sudden question, Juven stammers, expressing confusion and not understanding what she means. Hetzel quickly changes the subject and tells him that she asked if he likes mechus, calling out in the staff room about having mechus with various flavors. She offers strawberry, lemon, blueberry, and grapefruit to the staff members. The staff members react with surprise and curiosity, asking about the occasion for the treats and eagerly choosing their favorites. Meanwhile, Juven politely declines Hetzel's offer, stating he doesn't like sweet things. Embarrassed by the exchange, Hetzel responds awkwardly and laughs it off. Moments later, Hetzel rests her head on her desk, questioning her actions. She wonders aloud why she impulsively asked Juven about his feelings. She then appeals to Dio to take back the ability he granted her, fearing she might die of embarrassment otherwise. Dio responds playfully, commenting on Hetzel's direct approach with Juven. He declines her request to revoke the ability, pointing out that Juven didn't confess his feelings as she had hoped. Hetzel complains that the ability is flawed, citing disbelief that someone like Juven could be fully attracted to her. Dio jokes about human imperfection versus divine perfection. He suggests that if she doesn't like Juven, she should find someone else, implying she could manipulate anyone into falling for her with a simple gesture. Hetzel expresses ethical concerns about manipulating emotions in such a way. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Hetzel, Juven secretly watches her from a distance. He then turns away and casually scratches his back. Switching scenes, Dio is with another girl, feeling competitive due to Hetzel's lack of interest. He chuckles and engages with his new companion. Later, he notices her dress isn't fully zipped and helps her, earning her thanks and a goodbye kiss before leaving. However, Dio proceeds to delete her account, expressing frustration. He gazes at a small bottle containing her desires and muses to himself that her desire is as clear as river water. Dio swirls the bottle, contemplating how indistinguishable it is from the Styx. Clenching the bottle tightly, he declares that Hetzel is the only one he can trust. Dio explains that once Hetzel fills the bottle with a thick, viscous desire, he can break free from the constraints of annoying humans and Zeus. He eagerly anticipates Hetzel's cooperation in filling the empty bottle with a desire potent enough to intoxicate the entire realm of gods. He looks forward to witnessing how she, a seemingly sweet girl, will transform. Just then, there's a knock at the door. Seeing his beloved servant standing there, he remarks, well, look who's here. If it isn't my sweet servant, the insolent drunkard. Instantly, he rebukes him, calling him a jerk, mentioning that he wasted his stock so much that he won't be able to drink for a week. Hesitant, his servant says that is not it. Just then, behind the servant, Zeus's secretary, Lamia, appears. She comments that Dionysus seems to have settled and well since his move and mentions her visit to check on him after his absence. Adding that she also brings a message from Zeus, Lamia strokes a little bird perched nearby, causing it to chirp Zeus's demand for proper wine from Dionysus immediately, under threat of severe consequences. Dio bows respectfully before Lamia, who continues expressing her disappointment. She mentions his earlier confidence in producing the wine this time and now hears that he still hasn't managed to produce even a single bottle of proper wine. Lamia continues to express her concerns to Dionysus. She mentions Zeus's worsening temper and his insistence on needing a strong bottle of wine to sleep well, which complicates her duties as his secretary. Lamia acknowledges Dionysus' exemplary performance as the god of desire but criticizes the quality of the wine he has been producing, describing it as watery. Lamia emphasizes to Dionysus that Zeus's warning was serious and not an empty threat. Dia responds, committing to doing his best. Lamia then gives him a week to fulfill his task. Dio expresses shock at the timeline. She admonishes Dionysus about the deadline, making it clear that any delay in delivering the goods will result in her having to manage Zeus's worsening temper and deal with the aftermath. She firmly advises him to uphold his promise this time without fail. Meanwhile, Hatzel is in the school play area with two of her colleagues. One of them mentions how lovely the day is, perfect for a walk, noting that it finally feels like spring. She wonders how many people will be at the best spot in the school given the beautiful sunshine. Hatzel humorously comments as she means at the popular bench in front of the fountain. The other colleague agrees, pointing out that the spot always has a beautiful view and is likely full. As they reach the spot, they find it completely occupied. Hatzel, jokingly, suggests squeezing in between the students, adding that perhaps they can persuade the students to share the space by buying them ice cream. She humorously notes the high price of securing seats on such a beautiful day. Just then, they notice Gyuvan sitting alone on a bench. One of Hetzel's colleagues remarks about the seemingly empty spot nearby. As they approach, another comments on the unexpected sight of Mr. Park outside. They exchange pleasantries, inquiring about his lunch. Gyuvan responds affirmatively and asks if they are going to sit down. Both colleagues, feeling hesitant, mention preferring to go upstairs for coffee instead, leaving Hatzel alone with Gyuvan. Hatzel, surprised, turns to see her colleagues disappearing, questioning their sudden departure. Gyuvan, observing her reaction, asks if she plans to leave as well. He acknowledges that the younger teachers often find him difficult to be around due to his curt and unsmiling demeanor, assuring her that it is fine if she wants to leave too. She doesn't need to worry about his feelings. Hatzel reflects on how surprising it is to hear Mr. Park talk about himself like that. She wonders if he feels left out and realizes she might have used her own awkwardness as an excuse to avoid being friendly towards him, which makes her feel guilty. Coming out of her thoughts, Hatzel asks if she may sit down, explaining that she wanted to enjoy the sunshine on such a lovely day. Gyuvan agrees, and she initiates the conversation by remarking on how quickly their vacation went by. She then inquires about which class he is the homeroom teacher for this year. Gyuvan responds that he is with the 3rd grade and points out that she should have known since they work in the same teacher's room. Hatzel acknowledges her oversight and apologizes with a nervous laugh. Hatzel reflects on how the new school year has barely begun and she already feels pressured. She questions why she is getting nervous around Mr. Park, especially since he is the one who supposedly likes her. She wonders if it's because she has seen his emotions, but observing his unchanged expression, she doubts he has feelings for her. Gyuvan speaks up, noting that he can tell she keeps sneaking glances at him. He acknowledges her attempt to be considerate, but assures her that he doesn't mind being alone and she doesn't need to make things less awkward. She can just enjoy the sunshine in silence. Listening to Gyuvan's words, Hatzel starts to think he might actually dislike her. Meanwhile, Dio sits in a state of panic, groaning about having both Lamia and Zeus putting immense pressure on him. He feels doomed considering how little desire Hatzel seems to have, comparing her to a monk. He turns to his loyal servant, questioning if Hatzel can develop any significant desire within a week. His servant advises that he'll need to force it out of her, reminding him that Zeus never makes empty threats. The servant recounts witnessing Zeus dismember a nymph into thousands of pieces just for spilling a cup of water on him. Dio, sarcastically appreciating the grim encouragement, resolves to take drastic measures. As the god of desire, he decides to make Hatzel beg for his help before the week ends. Apologizing to Hatzel, he acknowledges that his life is at stake. Although he initially planned to take things slowly and enjoy the process, he admits that the situation requires a change of plans. Dio determines to give Hatzel a crash course in desire himself, despite his initial reluctance. Meanwhile, Hatzel, trying to break the awkwardness, offers Gyuvan a cup of ginseng tea. She mentions her attempt to find a non-sweet option in the snack bar, hoping he would appreciate it. Gyuvan accepts the cup with a simple thanks. He then starts to say he has something important to discuss with her, but before he can finish, a screen appears in front of Hatzel. She receives a message from Dio ordering her to kiss Gyuvan. Startled, Hatzel mumbles something under her breath, her thoughts reeling. Gyuvan, catching her words, asks if she mentioned kiss. Flustered, Hatzel quickly tries to cover up, explaining it was a misunderstanding about a lipstick mark on her cup. Meanwhile, Dio continues to send messages, but Hatzel resolutely decides not to respond, determined to ignore his persistent attempts to intervene. Changing the subject hastily, Hatzel redirects the conversation, asking Gyuvan about what he was about to say earlier, hoping to steer away from the awkwardness caused by Dio's interference. Gyuvan continues, expressing his observations about Hatzel's recent gestures of kindness towards him, such as offering him MQs and buying him a drink. He reassures her that such efforts are unnecessary, and that he doesn't want to burden her. Hetzel, taken aback by Juhan's words, stammers a response denying that she was going out of her way or seeing him as a burden. She tries to clarify her intentions, but Juhan's discomfort is palpable. Feeling uneasy about the situation, Hetzel addresses Juhan again, calling him by his surname. His reaction makes her realize how uncomfortable he seems around her. Reflecting on her behavior, Hetzel recognizes that she may have been cold towards him in the past, due to her reserved nature and lack of desire for making friends. She acknowledges that her reluctance to initiate friendships has inadvertently led to strained interactions with Jihan, maybe another consequence of her desire-free existence. Meanwhile, Daio's messages keep arriving, each one ignored by Hetzel, as she maintains her focus on the conversation with Gyuhan. She apologizes to him for any discomfort she may have caused, explaining that her intention was simply to be considerate. She admits to being timid in the past, but expresses her desire for them to become friends and asks if he would accept her efforts as a fellow colleague. Gyuhan reassures her, clarifying that he didn't mean to imply her efforts were unwanted. He explains that his earlier comment was more about his own concern that she might perceive him as overly particular about food. To emphasize his point, he takes out mechus from his pocket and offers them to her, jokingly referring to them as mechu. Hetzel chuckles at his gesture. Hetzel expresses surprise, questioning if Juhan was concerned about her perception of him as immature. Juhan clears his throat awkwardly. Hetzel then asks for his opinion on mechus now that he's had some. Juhan replies that the fact that he has tried them satisfies him. Just then, out of nowhere, a football hurtles towards Hetzel. Juhan shouts a warning, alerting Ms. John to the ball's trajectory. She reflexively shuts her eyes, reopening them to find herself slipping. To her bewilderment, she now stands atop the school building, clutching its dome. Perplexed, she wonders where she is and how she ended up there. Daiva startles Hetzel, addressing her as Ms. Hetzel John and remarking on her surprise. He chides her for leaving him on read, claiming he resorted to drastic measures as a result. Hetzel reacts with frustration, questioning why Dio continues to involve her in such situations. She pleads for him to help her down from her precarious position on the dome, clinging tightly. Dio reassures her, asserting that gods do not harm humans as it is beneath them. He then flies away from her, commenting on the wind and implying her fearfulness in such heights. He suggests beginning negotiations, proposing that all she needs to do is kiss that man, making it sound simple and straightforward. Hetzel questions Dio's intentions, incredulous that he brought her to such a height for such a trivial reason. She chastises him, reminding him that being a god doesn't excuse his behavior. She pleads with him, stating he's not negotiating, or rather threatening her life if she doesn't comply. Dio pauses, acknowledging her concern. He then addresses her formally as Ms. Ethics Teacher, Hetzel Jian, and poses a philosophical question about whether she has ever desired something deeply. Confused, Hetzel responds, questioning how such a profound feeling could arise from just a single kiss. Just then, she slips from the building and begins to fall. She cries out for help, fearing for her life. In midair, she wonders if this is the end, lamenting that she might die without ever truly desiring anything, as her friends have pointed out. Memories of her past choices flash before her, highlighting her sense of emptiness from not pursuing desires like others. Just as she resigns to her fate, Dio suddenly appears and catches her. He teases her gently, calling her a scaredy cat and reassuring her that he wouldn't let her get hurt. He dismisses her concerns, describing the experience as a dream. Relieved, Hetzel expresses her initial belief that she was truly going to die. Dio chuckles lightly and apologizes, then suggests they continue their interrupted conversation. Dio confirms Hetzel's commitment to cooperate, and they seal their agreement with a pinky promise. Curious about her sudden change of heart, Dio questions her, expressing surprise at her quick compliance. Hetzel responds somberly, telling him to be quiet as she herself is unsure if her decision is the right one. She explains that she doesn't want regret to be her final emotion before potentially dying, preferring to experience something, whatever it may be. She then asks Dio a question, pondering why kissing someone is the focus when there are many other desires in the world such as food, popularity, knowledge, and more. Dio explains confidently that throughout human history, love has consistently been the most desired and enduring theme across all cultures and eras. He challenges Hetzel to disagree, convinced it's an undeniable truth. As Dio leans in closer, Hetzel nervously asks him to cover up properly, refusing to be swayed by his tactics. Dio laughs in response, admitting disappointment that his attempt didn't succeed as he had hoped. Dio presents Hetzel with 2 small bottles containing different shades of red liquid, explaining that they represent the desire for food from the same person at different points in their life. He contrasts their densities, pointing out that the slight reddish one reflects a time when the person struggled to afford 3 meals a day in their early years. In contrast, the strong red bottle represents their 40s, where they are successful, wealthy, and able to indulge in expensive and delicious meals whenever they please. Dio challenges the conventional expectation that desire should decrease with age and success, questioning why the desire in their 40s is thicker instead of diminishing. He explains that the more someone acquires and experiences what they desire, the stronger their desire becomes. Those who have tasted fulfillment are often the ones who crave it the most. Dio elaborates, emphasizing that gaining diverse experiences is crucial for truly understanding and feeling passionate desire. Hazel gulps nervously, seeking clarification. She asks if Dio is suggesting she should date not only Mr. Park, but also many other men. Dio confirms with confidence, explaining that his role now is to educate her on various special techniques for seducing as many men as possible. Hazel questions Dio about leaving through a door to return to reality, to which Dio confirms. She then requests that he refrain from summoning her out of the blue like this in the future, emphasizing that proper communication involves mutual agreement on time and place. Dio laughs off her comment, acknowledging her point with amusement. Hazel persists, reminding him that being suddenly thrown into the sky, even in a dream, is terrifying. Dio reassures her, conceding to her terms since she agreed to cooperate. He promises to give his best effort, reminding her of his domain as the god of desire. He eagerly anticipates her experiencing the joy of obtaining something she deeply desires. Hazel acknowledges that there's another reason besides Dio's satisfaction in his expertise that she's cooperating with him. Dio cryptically brushes off her question about the other reason, claiming it's something beyond her need as a human to understand, attributing it to God's stuff. He teasingly probes Hazel, questioning if she feels a desire to know more. Unmoved, Hazel simply bids him farewell, indicating she's done with the conversation. Reflecting on Dio's behavior, Hazel acknowledges his unpredictable nature and self-confidence, noting how he startled her with his sudden seriousness. She finds him peculiar yet undoubtedly powerful, given his status as a god. Meanwhile, as Hazel comes back to awareness, she finds herself surrounded by classmates in the play area. Juven is the first to approach, asking if she's awake. Other students notice her opening her eyes and call out to Mr. Park, informing him that she's awake. Concerned, Juven checks on Hazel's well-being and swiftly instructs his students to assist her onto his back, visibly anxious to ensure she's taken care of. Carrying her swiftly, Jagan dashes towards the nurse's office with Hazel in his arms. Juven reassures her as he tends to her wound later in the nurse's office. Hazel insists she's fine, but Juven disagrees, emphasizing the importance of applying ice and using a compression bandage for her head injury. Hazel persists, expressing concern about missing her afternoon classes. Despite her protests, Jayan continues to care for her. Reflecting on the situation, Hazel realizes she must have greatly alarmed Mr. Park, noticing how shaken he was initially but now returning to his usual demeanor as he tends to her. Standing up, Jayan remarks that the ice pack isn't cold enough and decides to fetch a new one. Recalling the incident where Juhan's desire gauge showed 100%, Hazel reflects on her initial skepticism, now considering that perhaps it wasn't an error after all. She ponders the implications. If Juven truly likes her, it complicates the situation further. She worries about the potential consequences of kissing someone who has strong feelings for her, fearing she could inadvertently hurt him by later claiming it was a mistake. Feeling the weight of the situation, Hazel is uncertain about what course of action to take next. Just as Juven returns with a new pack of ice, he accidentally trips and falls onto the bed, landing directly on top of Hazel. Apologizing profusely while still on top of her, Jayan expresses his regret for losing his balance. Hazel, glancing at his desire gauge, which now shows 100%, is taken aback. She wonders if it could go even higher and if Juven might react unusually due to it being overloaded. Concerned but trying to lighten the awkward moment, Hazel asks if he's okay. Juven assures her he's fine, attributing his stumble to a momentary loss of balance. Still pinned beneath him, Hazel addresses Gyuhan. Noticing his intense gaze on her lips, she questions if something is on her lips, prompting Gyuhan to explain that he was simply noticing their peach scent, possibly lingering from the mechus he gave her earlier. As Gyuhan leans in towards her, closing the distance to her lips, Hazel's mind races with uncertainty. She hesitates, feeling unprepared for the suddenness of the moment, but remembers her promise to Dio and resolves to give it her best effort. Steeling herself, she leans in to kiss Gyuhan. However, just as their lips are about to meet, Jayan abruptly stops, clearly panicked. He apologizes profusely, expressing his confusion and stating that he didn't intend for it to happen. He asks her to forget what just transpired and hastily excuses himself to the washroom, berating himself for his actions. In the privacy of the washroom, Gyuhan continues to scold himself, grappling with his feelings. After splashing water onto his face, Gyuhan stares at his reflection in the mirror, scolding himself internally. He chastises his own thoughts, accusing himself of behaving like a sick pervert. He acknowledges the effect Hetzel's big round eyes have on him, how her small nose makes him smile, and how he imagines what her full, plump lips might feel like against his own. Juven realizes he must have lost control for a moment, feeling as though Hetzel might have actually wanted him to kiss her. Continuing to rebuke himself, he curses under his breath, splashing more water as if to clear his mind. He tells himself to stop seeing things that aren't there and reminds himself that he's managed to hide his feelings so far. He vows not to ruin everything by pursuing his feelings for her, knowing she already has a boyfriend. Juven resolves to control himself better, determined not to complicate Hetzel's life or jeopardize their relationship with his impulsive actions. In the staff room, Juven receives surprising news about Hetzel's relationship status. Colleagues inform him in hushed tones, cautioning against saying anything in front of her. They reveal that Hetzel recently became single again, shocking Gaihan. Curious about the details, one colleague explains that they noticed Hetzel's YouTube channel had changed significantly, indicating she gave control to her boyfriend after their breakup. They speculate that despite the appearance of a long-term relationship, it may not have been as close as perceived. The ex-boyfriend's behavior in his videos suggests he wasn't heartbroken over the split. Yugen expresses confusion, recalling how highly Hetzel spoke of her boyfriend. Another colleague quietly wonders if Hetzel might have been deceived or taken advantage of by him. Meanwhile, in the staff room, the vice principal announces an upcoming dinner to mark the beginning of the new semester. Surprisingly, only 2 people raise their hands in agreement, prompting the vice principal's curiosity about the lack of participation among the younger staff members. She specifically inquires about Hetzel and Mr. Park's whereabouts. Hetzel hesitantly raises her hand, agreeing to attend the dinner since she doesn't have other plans. However, before the matter can settle, Juven unexpectedly stands up and interjects. He apologizes to the vice principal, stating that Hetzel needs to accompany him somewhere urgently. Confused murmurs spread among the staff as Hetzel turns to see Juven standing. He addresses her directly, noting her head injury from lunch and expressing concern about a potential concussion. Juven insists they go to the hospital immediately for a thorough examination, offering to drive. He urges Hetzel to leave him promptly. Later that evening at Today Hospital, the doctor examines Hetzel's x-ray and delivers comforting news. There's nothing abnormal and advises her to get plenty of rest. He mentions how fortunate she is not to have sustained any injuries despite falling on a brick floor. Observing Gyuhin's evident concern, the doctor suggests Hetzel reassure her boyfriend that she's okay. Both Hetzel and Juven react awkwardly to the assumption, with Hetzel quickly clarifying their relationship while the doctor apologizes for the mix-up, noting Gyuhin's evident care and concern. Moments later, while Hetzel sits in the car with Gyuhin, he suggests she should go home and rest as the doctor advised. He offers to explain to the other teachers why she couldn't join them at the restaurant. In a flashback, the vice principal instructs both Hetzel and Gyuhin sternly, emphasizing that they must attend the restaurant event after their visit to the hospital. She stresses the importance of their presence, indicating that a head count will be conducted later, leaving no room for them to skip the gathering. In the present moment, Juven persists with concern, suggesting they consider going to a larger hospital due to Hetzel briefly losing consciousness. Despite his worry, Hetzel assures him she's fine and appreciates his concern. Hetzel jokingly reflects on the situation, imagining she could have demanded compensation from Dio if she had been injured. Reflecting on the incident in the nurse's office, Gaihan acknowledges that he may have overreacted, feeling apologetic for potentially overstepping boundaries. Hetzel responds with surprise, expressing gratitude instead. Juven, however, remains remorseful, considering his actions in the nurse's office unforgivable, especially given Hetzel has a boyfriend. He sincerely apologizes for his overly forward behavior. Hetzel clarifies that she didn't push Gyuhin away and reveals she broke up with her boyfriend, who turned out to be deceitful. She reflects on her reluctance to discuss this with Gyuhin, fearing it might ruin the mood. Despite her reservations, she explains that her ex-boyfriend was a terrible person, and she ended the relationship by taking everything he had and kicking him out. Hearing this, Gyuhin starts laughing uncontrollably. Hetzel, surprised by his reaction, wonders aloud if she might actually be good at making jokes, since she didn't expect him to find it so amusing. Gyuhin, unable to suppress his smile, acknowledges Hetzel's talent for joking. He clarifies that his laughter isn't about her breakup and expresses genuine sympathy. Hetzel reassures him, understanding his intent. Meanwhile, Hetzel reflects on her previous perception of Gyuhin as stoic and unemotional. She realizes she was mistaken, noting that she has never seen him smile so happily before. His joyful expression makes her recognize the depth of his feelings for her. As she continues to stare at him, she contemplates the unfairness of using his affection to steal a kiss and then asking him to pretend it never happened. She acknowledges that taking advantage of his feelings would be wrong. Yurin's ears and cheeks turn red as he becomes aware of Hetzel's gaze. Soon, they arrive at a fancy bar. Observing the upscale venue from outside, Hetzel had expected a simpler place for their meal, not a sophisticated bar like this. Juven explains that the group finished dinner early and decided to come here for drinks, influenced by the vice principal's preference and the bar's positive reviews. As they step inside, Hetzel is struck by the opulent interior, feeling as though the ambience is designed to overwhelm the guests. Suddenly, a voice interrupts, expressing impatience at their delayed arrival. Just then, to her shock, Hetzel notices Dio approaching with an order book, welcoming them warmly and asking to take their order. Hetzel, filled with anger, accuses Dio of orchestrating the situation, questioning whose mind he influenced this time, the head teachers or the vice principals. She expresses her frustration, stating that while messing with her is one thing, involving her coworkers crosses a line. Dio, seemingly confused, replies that this is his workplace. Hetzel accuses him of lying, incredulous that a god would work in a bar, and questions why he isn't attending to his divine duties. Dio counters, explaining that even gods need to make a living and that earning money in the human realm is challenging. He adds that through his hard work, his bar gained fame on social media. Dio wonders why he is being scolded for his success. Hetzel sarcastically asks if the teachers came to the bar after seeing it on social media. That was it from today's video. I hope that you liked today's video, and if you did, hit that like button, as today's like goal is likes. Comment part 2 down below for the next part. Also consider subscribing with the notification bell on to get notified as soon as a new video drops onto the channel. You can also join the channel to support me financially and watch videos before public release. I'll meet you in the next video. Until then, thanks for watching.